A billionaire was rushing to his morning meeting when a small girl crashed into him at full speed, hard enough to knock the breath out of him. In the blink of an eye, she took his wallet and ran. He chased her with anger, through crowded streets, through the roaring noise of the city, determined to catch the little thief who dared to take from him. But when he finally reached her, in a narrow, forgotten alley, the truth she revealed didn't just stop him, it broke him. This wasn't about a stolen wallet. It was about a child's desperate fight to save the only person she had left. The morning sun rose softly over the city, but Zara did not feel its warmth. Her slippers were thin, nearly broken. Her small dress had lost its color long ago. She walked slowly, her tiny hands hanging by her sides, carrying nothing but a quiet heaviness in her heart, and a mother's voice she could not forget. "Zara, we will be okay. But if the fever grows worse, we must get the medicine." Zara had no father, no cousins, no sisters, no one to call family except Mama. Mama was her beginning, and her whole world. Last night the fever had shaken Mama's body like a storm. Her breathing was weak. Her eyes were tired. Zara held her hand until morning, whispering prayers into the silence. So today, Zara went out to look for help. She walked through her neighborhood first. She knocked on old wooden doors, called softly to people she knew. But some pretended not to hear. Some heard, but did not care. And some simply closed their doors. When the fever grew worse at dawn, Zara knew she could not remain in the place where poverty lived like a neighbor. So she walked toward the wealthier side of the city. And the difference was like night and day. Tall buildings touched the sky. The ground was clean. Cars shone like mirrors. People wore clothes that looked new every day. They walked as if nothing in the world could ever touch them. And that was when she saw him, Eric Bryan, a man people respected so quickly their smiles almost looked forced. His wristwatch caught the sunlight like a blade. His shoes looked as though the ground polished itself for him. His suit was perfect. His walk, measured, confident. They said he owned companies. They said he made money move like water. They said the world listened when he spoke. But Zara did not see all that. She saw something else. She saw a man who might listen. A man who might help. Her heart whispered, "He can save Mama." But would he? Would someone like him stop for someone like her? Before fear could stop her, her small feet moved. Her hands acted before her thoughts could catch up. As Eric adjusted his sleeve to check the time, something light brushed past him. Then he felt it. His pocket empty. His wallet gone. His world snapped sharp. He spun around. There, just ahead, was a thin little girl with fading clothes and broken sandals, running with speed born from survival. Zara! But she wasn't running to escape. She was running to be followed, to be seen, to be heard. Eric's expression changed. Not fear, not surprise, but pride, burning like fire. No one touched his things. No one challenged him. No one made him run. So he chased her. People stepped aside as the two moved through the street. Their footsteps echoed like clashing worlds. His expensive shoes were not made for running. But he ran anyway, not because of the wallet, but because his pride had been touched. Zara weaved through the crowd like a shadow, past vendors, past cars. Zara ran like someone who had learned to survive. Her feet knew the streets. Her body knew how to move fast. Desperation was her strength. Eric got closer. Her breathing grew rapid. She turned the corner, into a narrow alley. Dark, quiet, hidden from the glittering world outside. Eric followed, and in that narrow alley, the world paused. Because what waited at the end wasn't a thief. It wasn't a victory. It was the truth. A truth that would break one heart open and soften another. A truth that would change both their lives forever. Zara didn't know it yet, and Eric had no idea. But destiny had just taken their hands and locked them together forever. The chase led them into a narrow passage where the city's loudness faded into distant echoes. The walls seemed to close in, stained with old rain and forgotten years. The alley ended at a tall, cracked brick wall. There was no door, no window, no escape. Zara finally stopped. She turned around fast, breathing hard. Her small chest rose and fell like a bird's wings fighting to stay alive. The wallet was clutched tightly in both of her hands. She looked even smaller now. 10, maybe 11. but her eyes carried an age life had forced on her. Her hair curled tightly around her face, messy from heat and running. Her dress was the kind worn, not for style, but because it was the only one she had. Her sandals were little more than thin soles and breaking straps. Eric stopped a few steps away, breath heavy, sweat now darkening his crisp shirt. His heart thundered, not just from the chase, but something sharper, wounded pride. He did not raise his voice loudly. His anger was quieter, more dangerous. "You stole from me." The girl didn't speak. She didn't plead. She didn't throw excuses into the air the way guilty people often do. She simply held the wallet to her chest, the way a child holds something fragile. Something important. Her silence made his anger twist. "You think life is a game?" he said, stepping closer. "You think you can just take from people because you want to?" Still, she said nothing. Not fear, not defiance, just a tired stillness. He reached out sharply and grabbed the wallet from her hands. His fingers brushed hers. Her hands were cold. He opened the wallet, ready to count the damage, to confirm the theft. Every card was still there. Every bill was still there. Nothing was missing. Eric froze. The heat of anger began to drain from him, replaced by confusion. He looked at her again. Really looked. Her eyes were dark, but not wild, not cunning. Simply tired. Tired in a way no child's eyes should ever be. "What were you going to do with it?" he asked, voice lower now. "If you didn't take anything?" She swallowed once. Her voice came out so quietly he almost didn't hear it. "I just needed help." The words did not fall loud. They fell heavy. His chest tightened. "Help?" he repeated, not understanding, not yet. She nodded once. Her lips trembled, but no tears came. She had cried all she could long before this moment. "My mother is dying," she whispered. "She's very sick. The fever won't stop. I can't lose her. She's all I have." The alley seemed to fall silent. Even the air paused to listen. This was not a thief. This was a child with nowhere left to run, nowhere left to ask, nowhere left to hope, except here. And without knowing why, Eric felt his anger exhale, not disappear, but soften. Something was changing, something he wasn't ready for, something that would follow both of them long after this alley. The alley was quiet, too quiet considering the city outside was still roaring with traffic, laughter, and money, moving the way only the wealthy side of the city understood. But here between these peeling walls and fading bricks, the world slowed down, almost like time knew something important was happening. Eric stood still, wallet in hand, his breathing finally easing. Zara stood across from him, her small hands empty now, fingers trembling just a little, not from fear, not from running, but from life itself. He could have walked away. He had every reason to. He could have called the police, made a scene, ended her small world with a phone call. He could have chosen the path rich men take when inconvenience stands in front of them. Step over it. But something about the way she said, "My mother is dying," would not let him move. People lie. People manipulate. People take advantage. Eric knew this well. But Zara didn't speak like someone trying to win pity. She spoke like someone who was tired. Not yesterday tired. Not from the chase tired. A deeper tired. The kind that settles into your bones when life has been hard for a long, long time. Eric finally looked at her. Really looked. Her elbows were thin. Her wrists small. Her collarbones sharp beneath the faded fabric of her dress. Her sandals were barely sandals at all. Dirt clung to her fingers. Not from laziness, but from living in a world that demanded struggle every single day. The kind of living the rich never have to think about. "What happened to your mother?" he asked. His voice was not gentle, but it was no longer angry either. Zara lowered her eyes. "She got sick. The medicine finished. They said we need money before they can give us more." Eric didn't react, but inside something tightened. He knew it was true. Hospitals ask for money. Pharmacies ask for money. And people who had nothing didn't get treated. The world was built to keep some people alive and let others fade quietly. "What's your name?" he asked. "Zara," she said. "Just Zara. No last name. No full identity. Just a child trying to keep the only person she loves alive. She didn't step forward. She didn't beg. She just stood there in her truth. Eric exhaled slowly, the kind of breath that comes when something shifts inside you without your permission. And then he said it. "Take me to her." The words came before he fully understood them. Zara lifted her head, surprise flickering across her face. Not hope. Hope is dangerous. Hope is something life had taught her to avoid. You don't have to," she said, not out of pride, but because experience had taught her that help rarely stays. Eric's eyes didn't soften, but they changed. "I said take me," he repeated. His tone was steady, firm, but no longer distant. Something human had returned to him. Zara nodded. A small nod, careful, almost fragile. Then she turned and began to walk. Eric followed, not because he was trying to be a hero, not because he felt sorry, but because something inside him had moved. Something he could not ignore. Something real. Something he hadn't felt in a long time. They left the alley and stepped back into the chaos of the city. But this time, Eric did not see the city the way he always had. The shiny buildings, the rushing cars, the impatient horns. All of it felt distant, like noise without meaning, like a world built to move fast, so no one had time to notice suffering. Zara walked ahead of him, small steps, quick steps. She didn't look behind to see if he was still there. She didn't need to. If he was going to leave, he would have left already. People always left early. That was something she understood well. They crossed busy streets, weaving through crowds that didn't care enough to look. No one noticed the girl with worn clothes and tired eyes. No one noticed the wealthy man in a suit walking behind her. They were just two figures swallowed by the city's endless hunger. The deeper they walked, the more the landscape changed. The glass buildings were replaced by cracked walls. The clean sidewalks turned into broken ground. The noise shifted from business to survival. Street vendors shouted prices. Children chased each other without shoes. A man slept on a cardboard sheet under a shade of rusted zinc. The air felt heavier here, as if it carried years of stories no one bothered to hear. Eric felt something unfamiliar start to grow in his chest. Not guilt, not yet. Something slower. A discomfort. A realization that there were whole parts of the world he had never let himself see. Zara walked with the confidence of someone who knew every turn, every hidden corner, every step that avoided trouble. She hugged close to walls. She stepped over broken bottle glass. She avoided the places where loud voices gathered. This was a child who had learned survival the way others learned to read. When she finally stopped, it was before a small doorway, its paint peeling, its frame leaning as though time and weather had gradually tried to erase it. A curtain hung where a door should have been. It fluttered in the faint, warm wind. "This is where you live?" Eric asked. Zara nodded. She pushed the curtain aside. The room they entered was dim. Too dim. A fan stood in the corner, barely moving. The air smelled of dampness, heat, and exhaustion. But the thing that stopped him, froze him hard, was the figure on the thin mattress. Her mother, her skin pale, her breath shallow, her frame weakened to bone beneath cloth that once fit differently. Her eyes were half open but unfocused, like someone fighting to stay in a world that was slowly letting go of them. Zara whispered, "Mama, I brought help." Eric couldn't speak, because in that moment the truth struck him so sharply. He finally understood. This was not theft. This was desperation. Pure, raw, human. And the world had turned away long before he arrived. The room felt too small for the moment unfolding inside it. The air was thick, warm, and heavy, as if even the walls were tired. A single window let in a thin blade of daylight, but it did little to soften the darkness that had settled in the space. Zara knelt beside the mattress, touching her mother's arm with the gentleness of someone who had done it 1,000 times before. Not to wake her, not to soothe her, just to say, "I'm here." Her mother stirred at the touch. Her eyes, half open, moved slowly, not toward the light, not toward the world, but toward her child. Even through the haze of sickness, love recognized love. Eric stood still, every inch of him unmoving. His polished shoes sat on a floor where the tiles were cracked and uneven. His suit, tailored and perfect, looked painfully out of place. He had walked into another world, one hidden inside the very city he thought he understood. A world where choice wasn't a word people used, where survival wasn't a story. It was the air, Zara's mother tried to speak, but the sound that came out was broken, a whisper of a whisper. Zara leaned close, placing her forehead to her mother's. "It's okay," she murmured. "I'm here. I didn't leave. I didn't give up." Eric's jaw tightened. Not in anger now, but something deeper. Something that pushed against every wall he had built inside himself. He noticed things he hadn't before. The empty blister packs of medicine, the folded paper with dosage schedules written carefully, the bucket of water in the corner, the towel worn thin from being washed too many times. This was not neglect. This was effort. This was a fight they were losing only because the world had priced survival too high. Zara turned to Eric at last. Her voice was steady, not crying, not begging, not shaking. "Can you help her, please?" There it was. Not desperation, not manipulation. Just a child asking the world for one more chance. Eric knelt slowly beside the mattress. He had never knelt in a place like this before. He placed 2 fingers gently at the side of the mother's neck, feeling for a pulse. It was there, weak, fading, but present. He exhaled, long and slow. "We need to get her to a hospital," he said. Zara's eyes flicked with something sharp and painful. "They won't take us." Eric frowned. "Why not?" Zara looked down. "We owe them money." Silence filled the room. Not the silent kind that feels peaceful. The kind that reveals how unfair the world can be. Something inside Eric shifted. Not his logic. Not his wealth. Not his pride. His humanity. For the first time in a very, very long time, he didn't feel like a man who owned buildings. He felt like a man who had just seen the world from the ground. For a long moment, no one spoke. The silence didn't feel empty. It felt full, heavy enough to press itself into the room, into the floor, into the space between every heartbeat. The old fan squeaked as it turned, pushing warm air in slow, tired circles. It didn't cool anything. It just moved the heat around. Zara stayed beside her mother, her small fingers tracing the back of the woman's hand. Not to wake her, but to comfort her. Eric stood very still. His phone felt heavier than any briefcase, any contract, any deal he had ever made. Hospitals and emergencies. Those were worlds he never had to worry about. His own life was filled with private care, quick access, and staff who handled things before he ever needed to ask. He had never seen what it meant to wait for help, to be denied it, to be told healing had a price before compassion. He had lived in the city his entire life, yet he had never stepped into this side of it. He had never seen what it meant to be sick and unable to afford to get better. He took out his phone and dialed. One ring. "Yes, sir?" A crisp voice answered. "I need an ambulance," Eric said. His voice was calm, controlled. "Right now." There was a pause. "Location, sir?" Eric looked at Zara. She told him the address in a quiet voice, like she had repeated it to strangers many times, hoping one of them would care. On the call, the dispatcher hesitated. "That area, response time is unpredictable." "Then make it predictable," Eric said. Not raised, not angry, just final. "Send it now." "Yes, sir. Ambulance is on its way." He ended the call. Zara didn't thank him. She didn't smile. She didn't believe yet. Hope is a dangerous thing when hope has broken you before. Eric knelt beside her. "They are coming," he said quietly. Zara didn't answer. She just held her mother's hand tighter. Minutes passed, but they felt long enough to fill years. Her mother stirred again, her breathing unsteady. Like every breath was a fight she might lose. A small sound escaped her, raw, painful, human. Zara leaned close. "Stay," she whispered. "Stay with me, please." Then, far away, a sound began to rise. Not voices, not engines, not footsteps. A siren, soft first, then louder, then filling the street. Zara's head lifted. Not in joy, but in disbelief. Only when the red light splashed across the room's walls did her breath break in a small, shaky exhale. Not a sob, just release. The paramedics entered. They didn't question. They didn't delay. They lifted her mother with hands that understood how to move someone fragile. Zara never let go of her mother's hand. Eric followed them out. People outside stared. Not at the woman on the stretcher. Not at the flashing lights. But at the wealthy man in a perfectly tailored suit, walking beside a girl in worn sandals. Two worlds that never touched, walking together. And for the first time in his life, Eric did not care who saw. The ambulance raced through the streets, siren crying loud and clear. Zara sat beside her mother, her small hand wrapped around a hand that felt too cold, too fragile. She did not blink. She did not breathe fully, afraid that if she let go, even for a second, her mother might slip away with the next breath. Eric sat across from them, his suit out of place against the metal walls and harsh lights. There was no business deal here, no signature, no contract, just life hanging on. When the ambulance stopped, the back doors swung open and everything moved fast. Nurses rushed the stretcher inside. Bright, cold hospital light flooded around them, sharp and unforgiving. Voices overlapped. Pulse weak. Get a vitals panel. Prepare the exam bay. Zara followed closely, her hand still locked with her mother's. Eric stayed one step back, just long enough to speak to the intake nurse. She needs immediate care, he said. The nurse looked up, saw Zara, saw the mother, saw the exhaustion etched into both of their bodies. Then she saw Eric's suit. Her tone changed instantly. Professional, alert. Yes, sir, right away. Do you have her medical file? Zara's voice came small. We came before. The nurse's expression shifted. Recognition. And guilt. They had been turned away. Do you have insurance? The nurse asked, voice flattening back into business. Zara lowered her eyes. She didn't need to say anything. The silence answered. The nurse exhaled. We can stabilize her, but full treatment will require... Eric stepped forward, voice steady. Put everything under my account. The nurse blinked. Sir, this could become costly. ICU care, specialists, surgery. Eric didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. I said... His words were slow, measured, impossible to argue with. Put everything under my account. Something in the nurse's posture changed. Respect, and maybe relief. Understood, she said. The stretcher disappeared behind double doors. They closed, and the world went quiet, waiting as its own storm. Zara sat in a plastic chair in the hallway, pulling her knees close, her small body folded like she was trying to make herself smaller, trying to keep the world from touching her too hard. The overhead lights washed everything in pale color, but they could not hide the exhaustion in her eyes. A child should not know this kind of waiting. Eric stood beside her. He didn't sit. He didn't pace. He just stayed. Minutes passed. Then more. Time stretched itself thin. Finally, a doctor approached. His face was the kind that had seen too many things, had learned how not to show all of them. Her condition is critical, he said. A severe infection has spread. Her heart is weak, and her body is tired. We will begin treatment now, but you must be prepared. This will be a fight. Zara didn't cry. She just stopped. Sometimes the deepest pain is silent. Eric took a slow breath. Do everything you can, he said. The doctor nodded and walked away. Zara stared at the floor. Do you think she'll make it? She whispered. Eric knelt beside her this time, not because she needed him to, but because it was the only place that felt right. I don't know, he said honestly. But she has a chance now, and she didn't have one before. Zara closed her eyes. She did not smile. She did not break. She simply let hope sit beside fear. Just for a moment. Sometimes that is the bravest thing a person can do. The hospital lights flickered softly above them, humming with that quiet mechanical sound that feels strangely louder in moments of worry. People walked past. Doctors, nurses, visitors. But to Zara, everything felt far away. Like she was underwater. Like the world was happening on the surface, and she was sinking beneath it. Her hands were clasped together, small fingers interlaced, knuckles pale. She didn't cry. She hadn't cried in a long time. Tears were a luxury she couldn't afford. Life had taught her to hold pain inside and keep moving. Eric sat beside her, calm on the outside. But something inside him was shifting. He felt it. The weight of something unfamiliar. Responsibility. Concern. Humanity not expressed through charity or distance, but presence. That was when two security officers approached. Their uniforms were neat, their steps firm, their expressions unreadable, but not unkind. Just tired. The kind of tired that comes from enforcing rules they didn't make. One of them spoke softly. "You," he said to Zara. "Come with us, please." Zara froze. Eric turned sharply. "For what?" The officer shifted slightly, uncomfortable. "We were informed that this girl has a previous incident record. A warning for attempted shoplifting." His eyes flicked to Zara's worn sandals, then to her hands. "We need to ask her a few questions. Standard procedure." Zara's breath stuttered. Not fear. Resignation. As if this moment was not surprising to her. As if the world had always made room to punish her, but never to help her. "I didn't steal," she whispered. But her voice was too soft for the hallway to respect. The officer reached out gently. Eric stood. The air shifted. "Don't touch her," he said. The officers paused, not because they feared him, but because his voice held something solid, something unmoving. "She is here because I brought her here," Eric continued. "She is not leaving, not now." "Sir," the officer replied carefully. "We understand, but protocol, Eric interrupted, is not more important than a child who is trying to save her mother." The hallway grew quiet. People looked, but no one spoke. The officer hesitated, then tried again, softer now. "If she has a history, we are required to document her presence. It's the law. Please, I'm not bad," she whispered. "I just needed help." Eric looked at her, and his heart, something he thought he had successfully taught not to feel, moved. He turned to the officers. "Then document her," he said. "But you do it here, in this hallway, while she stays near her mother." The officers exchanged glances. One nodded. That was mercy disguised as permission. They stepped aside, waiting. Zara slowly lifted her eyes to Eric, not with gratitude, not with surprise, but with something deeper. Recognition. Someone had chosen her side. Someone stood with her, not above her. For the first time in her life, Zara was not fighting alone. And for the first time in a long time, Eric was not watching life from a distance. Two worlds that were never meant to touch had finally met. The night moved slowly, the kind of slow that stretches minutes into hours. Machines beeped steadily behind closed ICU doors, each sound reminding them that life was hanging on threads they could not see. Zara sat curled in the hallway chair, her face turned toward the glass window that separated her from her mother. She didn't blink much. She didn't move much. She just watched, as if watching alone could keep her mother alive. Eric sat beside her, not speaking, not trying to fix the silence, just staying. And staying sometimes is the deepest form of kindness. A nurse approached softly. "She's awake." Zara didn't run. She stood, slowly, carefully, like someone rising from deep water. Eric followed her to the ICU door but stopped at the threshold, letting the nurse guide only Zara inside. The room was quiet, too quiet for the intensity of what was happening inside it. White sheets, pale walls, a faint light resting across her mother's face. Her mother's eyes were open now, hazy, unfocused, but alive. Zara moved close, her voice breaking into a whisper that held more love than any language could carry. "Mama, I'm here." The woman blinked slowly. Her lips parted. Her voice was a thin ghost of sound. "Zara." That one word was not just a name. It was a prayer, a home, an entire world of love spoken in a breath. Zara held her mother's hand gently, gentler than the world had ever held her. "You're okay," Zara whispered. "You're safe now." Help came. Her mother's eyes shifted slightly, following the direction of her daughter's gaze. Toward the glass window where Eric stood, watching quietly. She stared at him for a long moment. Recognition flickered, not because she knew him personally, but because she recognized what he represented. Power! Distance! A world where help is given with terms and expectations. Fear flickered in her eyes, but Zara shook her head, as if she felt the fear without needing to see it. "He helped us, Mama," she said softly. "He didn't leave." The woman swallowed, her hand trembling as it tried to lift, just slightly, toward Eric. Not to thank him, but to see him, to weigh him, to understand if this was mercy or a debt to repay later. Eric stepped forward, stopping at the doorway, respecting the space between them. He did not speak like a man who had saved someone. He spoke like a man who was learning how to be human. "I will not leave," he said quietly. "Not now. Not later. You are not alone." Zara's mother stared at him for a long time. Then her eyes softened, not into trust, not yet, but into something more powerful. Possibility. There are moments when love doesn't need words. This was one. The machines continued their steady rhythm. Zara leaned closer to her mother. Eric stayed in the doorway. Nothing was magically healed. No miracles arrived. But something shifted. A thread of hope, thin but real, wove itself carefully through the room. And sometimes, a thin thread is enough to keep a whole world from falling apart. Morning arrived quietly. No bright sunrise. No golden warmth spilling across the room. Just a soft light, thin and hesitant, like it wasn't sure if it was welcome here. Zara slept at last, her head resting on her folded arms beside her mother's bed. Her breathing was deep, the kind that only comes after too many hours of fear, too many days of being strong. When she was only a child, Eric stood near the window. He hadn't slept, but he wasn't tired. Something inside him was awake now. Something he had not felt in a long time. The door opened softly. A doctor stepped in. "We've stabilized her," he said. "But her heart is weak. She will need medication every day, regular monitoring. Without it..." He let the sentence fall away. He didn't need to finish it. Eric nodded. "She will have what she needs." The doctor hesitated, then spoke again, slower this time. "There is something else. Your name. Eric Bryan." The system matched it to employment records. Eric raised his eyes. The doctor glanced toward Zara's mother, then back to him. "Years ago, she worked at one of your companies. Janitorial staff. She was let go during the restructuring." For a moment, everything stilled. The air. The room. Eric's heartbeat. He remembered that restructuring. The spreadsheets. The red lines. The decisions made in conference rooms with glass walls and perfect air conditioning. Reduce expenses. Automate cleaning. Remove cost. Employees were numbers then. Not faces, not lives. She was one of those numbers. A number that had lost a job. A number that had lost security. A number that had fallen into the long, cold, downward slide of poverty. And now, Eric was standing at the end of that slide. He walked slowly back to the bed and stood at the doorway. Zara's mother breathed softly, eyelids fluttering. She was thin, fragile, but she was not small. He saw her now, not as someone weak, not as someone to save, but as someone who had once worked hard, stood proud, carried her child alone, until the world became too heavy. She did not fail. A system did. His system. Her eyes opened. They looked at each other. No one spoke, but a truth passed between them. Deep, heavy, unmistakable. He stepped closer. No suit, no title, no distance. Just a man facing what he had never bothered to see before. His voice was quiet, not polished, not practiced. "I didn't know it was you," he said. "But I know now, and I'm going to fix this." Zara's mother blinked slowly, not forgiving him, not yet, but acknowledging him. And sometimes acknowledgement is the first step toward healing. The machines kept their slow, steady rhythm. Zara slept, holding her mother's hand, and Eric stood there realizing this was not coincidence. This was life bringing him back to a doorway he had once closed, and giving him the chance, finally, to open it. Hospitals have a sound, not the sirens, not the machines, not the wheels that echo across polished floors. A quieter sound, a pressure in the air, a reminder that life and death walk side by side here, sometimes holding hands. Eric felt that weight as he stood at the administrative counter. Forms lay in front of him. Ink ready. Paper ready. Rules waiting. The administrator sat across from him. Calm, polite, unmoved. Not cruel, just trained to follow a system that had no heart. We can continue treatment, she said smoothly. But she will require long-term care, medication, monitoring, possibly surgery. Eric nodded. I will pay for everything. The administrator did not smile. Payment is not the only factor, she replied. We prioritize patients with ongoing insurance. We stabilized her because it was critical. But long-term admission is different. Eric's jaw tightened. You're saying you could still send her home? The administrator did not look away. That is the system, sir. And there it was. Not hatred, not prejudice. Just the cold machinery of a world that forgets the poor exist. Eric inhaled slowly, then took out his phone. Excuse me, he said quietly. He stepped 2 paces aside, dialed a number that most people would never have access to. The call answered on the first ring. Yes, Mr. Eric, how can I assist? Eric's voice did not rise. It didn't need to. I need your voice on the hospital board. Immediately. No explanation. No convincing. No threat. Power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it simply changes the weather in the room. 5 minutes later, the administrator's phone rang. She answered. Her posture shifted. Her tone softened. Her eyes widened slightly. Yes, I understand. Of course. Immediately. She hung up and looked at Eric with a new expression. Your request has been approved. We will move her to a private recovery room. Continuous care will begin right away. Eric said nothing. This was not triumph. This was repair. Repairing a wound he once helped create without ever seeing it bleed. He walked back to the hospital room. Zara sat beside her mother, her head resting near her hand, eyes half open from exhaustion. Her fingers were still clasped around her mother's, as if she feared letting go meant losing her. Eric sat down beside her. Your mother is staying, he said softly. Zara lifted her head, slowly, carefully, like the moment might break if she moved too fast. Not joy, not disbelief, relief. A relief so deep it trembled through her like a breath she had been holding for days. She didn't throw her arms around him. She didn't cry loudly. She simply whispered very softly, Thank you. Eric shook his head. No, he said. No thanking, no owing. We're getting through this. Together. The word hung in the air. Together. A word Zara had never belonged to before. She let it settle into her chest. Warm, small, and new. A light that did not burn out. Days passed slowly, each one stitched with careful breaths and quiet prayers. Zara's mother remained in the hospital, where the steady rhythm of machines kept time for her heart. Her body was still weak, but now she was surrounded by care that did not threaten to abandon her. Nurses checked on her gently. Doctors spoke to her with patience. The room was no longer a place of last chances. It was a beginning. Zara stayed beside her mother every day, barely leaving her side except to wash her face or accept a meal that Eric insisted she eat. She slept in a chair, curled under a thin blanket, her head resting against the side of the bed. And Eric always came back. Morning, afternoon, night. He didn't hover. He didn't lecture. He just showed up, again and again, because consistency is the truest form of compassion. After a week, the doctors allowed Zara's mother to be moved to a quieter ward, a room with a window that let in soft sunlight, the kind of room reserved for patients who finally had a chance to heal. But healing needs more than medicine. It needs rest, safety, a place to feel human again. So, one afternoon, Eric drove Zara and her mother to a small apartment, a place freshly cleaned, freshly painted, with a bed that did not sag, and a fan that worked without struggle. The refrigerator hummed quietly. The curtains were new. The room smelled of lavender soap, not dampness. Zara walked in first. She stopped halfway through the door. She didn't speak. She just stood there, trying to understand that this space was real. Her mother sat in her wheelchair near the window. Her hands rested on her lap. She looked around slowly, her eyes full of something fragile, a mix of gratitude, disbelief, and the fear that it might disappear. Eric placed a small bag of groceries on the counter, then another, and another. He didn't say, "Look what I brought." He didn't need to. Zara's mother finally spoke, her voice thin but steady. "Why are you doing this?" Not accusing, not suspicious, just tired of being owed nothing and expecting nothing. Eric looked at her. Really looked. "I don't want to fix your life," he said softly. "I want to give it back to you." Zara's mother held his gaze, searching for conditions, expectations, hidden debts. But she found none. Zara's eyes filled, not with tears of pain, but something gentler, hope. For the first time, she placed a hand on Eric's, not in gratitude, in trust. Life did not suddenly become perfect. Zara's mother was still weak. Some days were harder than others. Recovery was slow. Care was ongoing. There were medications to take, checkups to attend, moments of fear, moments of exhaustion, and moments of silent resilience. But there was also peace. For the first time in a long time, they slept without worrying whether the next day would take everything away. Zara began attending a small community school nearby. She wore shoes that fit her feet. Her notebooks were new. She sat in class quietly at first, soft-spoken, observant. But her eyes were bright, the brightness of someone who finally had room to dream. And Eric, he changed too. He returned to his glass building, his tailored suits, his meetings. But something was different. When he spoke, he listened more. When he made decisions, he considered the names behind the numbers. He started a program, quietly, with no press release, offering healthcare support to low-income workers and their families. Not charity, responsibility. One evening, he visited Zara and her mother. The apartment felt lived in now. There was music playing softly. A pot simmered on the stove. The air was warm, gentle, full of life. Zara was drawing at the table, her mother watching nearby. She turned when she heard Eric at the door, and her entire face lit up. Not because he was wealthy, not because of what he had done, because she knew he would come. She ran to him, not to cling, not to beg, but to welcome. Her mother smiled too, a small but real smile, the kind that comes only from a soul slowly returning to the world. They sat together, they ate together, they existed, not as savior and saved, not as giver and receiver, not as rich and poor, but as people, humans, living, caring, connected. And in that quiet room, where nothing extraordinary happened, something extraordinary finally made sense. Wealth is not money. Wealth is knowing your presence can keep someone from falling. Wealth is the willingness to stay when others leave. Wealth is the courage to look at someone and say, "You are not alone." And sometimes, wealth begins the moment you choose to care. Not every hand that takes is stealing. Sometimes hunger and fear are the thieves. True wealth is not what we keep. True wealth is what we use to protect, to lift, to restore. If this story touched your heart, tell us in the comments, and let us know where in the world you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe to Folktales by Olivia for more emotional, unforgettable stories that stay with you long after they end. Until next time, stay kind, stay hopeful, and keep watching.